We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are news generation.
Making news just for you. It's November 15th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Nell Song.
Good morning.
And today we have a new face joining us on News Gen. It's Lee Jung-Tae. Welcome, Jung-Tae.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. And the reason why we have Jung-Tae joining us in the studio today is for him to represent young North Koreans. So please stay with us to find out more about Jung-Tae and what he has to say on today's discussion topic. North Korea has hit this year's headlines mostly from a security threat angle. Press have poured attention on how the reclusive regime is developing a spy satellite with a bid to make an eye in the sky so that it can better target and attack Seoul's key facilities. But another story worthy of attention is its severe humanitarian crisis. North Korean defectors have told the media about the violent crimes committed by soldiers against civilians due to the country's worsening famine. Pyeongyang is experiencing a severe food shortage after being hit with one of the worst famines since the regime was founded in 1948. The North's COVID-19 restrictions have exacerbated the crisis. Just how severe is North Korea's humanitarian crisis? Defectors have often called for the international community to intervene and tackle this urgent issue, and that's why we also brought Jung-Tae, who defected from North Korea to South Korea in 2007. And Jung-Tae, once again, it's a pleasure having you here in the studio with us, and it'd be great if you could tell us more about yourself and when and how you exactly decided to come to South Korea.
Yeah, like I said, I am Jung-Tae and I am from North Korea. I came to South Korea in 2007. And I left North Korea in 2006. And you know, a lot of people in South Korea asked me like, how did you come to South Korea or why? And now I can say I may answer like, I came to South Korea for freedom. But back in 2006, when I crossed the border, actually I was just hungry, you know, to leave the regime. Because there are not many reasons, but tried to escape from hunger. I thought like I should leave North Korea because if I go to China, I thought at least I don't have to worry about food. Yeah.
I see. And do you mind if I ask you, how did you decide to, what was your route of defecting? And did you come with your family? Did you come alone? How old were you?
That's right. So I am 32, so I was born in 1992, and I came to South Korea with my mom and my sister. Yeah, so actually my family are here.
So you were only like 15, 16 at the time when you decided to cross from North Korea to China, and the answer that really resonated with me was the fact that you were so hungry.
That's right. Yeah, there was a simple reason as well as the main reason.
Yeah, it is a main reason, and sadly, we're still seeing so many North Korean residents go through this food shortage problem. Now, since arriving in Seoul, you said that now, if you reflect back on your journey, you came here for freedom. So tell us about the new chapter in life here in South Korea.
At the end of last year, I worked as a radio producer, so for NGO. So I used to make news content for North Korean human rights. Yeah. And then nowadays, since this year, I have been working as a freelance broadcaster. So, you know, this is how I appear on News Generation, which is a great honor. And I also have been appearing on Korea now. Yeah, so since 2021.
I see. So you've actively been on broadcast channels to talk about your experience, and I think you're a perfect match for today's discussion topic.
Thank you.
Because we're going to be talking about North Korean humanitarian crisis and the human rights violations that the international community often talks about. And we've recently heard a lot of horror stories about some defectors that were sent back forcibly from China to North Korea. So now, why don't you recap us on the latest reports of China's forced repatriation of North Korean refugees?
Right. I believe that we actually mentioned this on the show about North Korean defectors who were repatriated after the Asian Games. Back then they mentioned that the Ministry of Unification confirmed the number, but the identities of the people were unknown. But the repatriation was indeed true, and there was an activist group which claimed that it was around 600 600 people. But turns out there's actually about 1,000 more of them remaining in China, kept imprisoned. And there are concerns for those people to be sent back as well. And even the ministry in South Korea is requesting cooperation with the local ministry. And Tae Young-ho, a politician, a diplomat from North Korea here in South Korea right now, spoke up about this issue in the United States, asking for people to stop this repatriation.
Right.
And even under the UN Refugee Convention, it states that countries should not deport or repatriate people who's into lands where there are threats upon their freedom or upon their life. And while North Korean defectors, they do fit under this criteria, they are still being repatriated due to diplomatic issues, and there needs to be an active voice to stop this from happening.
And it mainly has to do with China being North Korea's key ally. That's why they've never recognized North Korean defectors as refugees, and what would violate what other UN member states, as you mentioned, Niall, would consider a basic international principle, and we call that non-refoulement. And this is when countries don't force refugees back to their home when they face the risk of persecution. And speaking of persecution, it's widely known that Pyongyang cruelly punishes citizens who've been repatriated from abroad. And Jongchul, I think you could give us a really good insight into this matter. How concerned are you for the lives of these hundreds of defectors that were sent back to North Korea forcibly? What type of future awaits them?
Actually, it depends on what kind of crime the repatriated North Koreans committed in China, I think. And indeed, 600 North Koreans repatriating at once is kind of unprecedented. So that's why a lot of North Koreans here in South Korea, they are really shocked, because it is unusual. And I think, like my mom, she used to do a smuggling when she was in North Korea. She went to China so many times to sell something to make money. And if you get caught by Chinese police by doing smuggling in China, I think that is kind of okay, still illegal, because you can get out of the prison by bribing after 3 months. But if you get caught by Chinese police in China during the journey to come to South Korea, it is a huge crime to North Korean regime. So that's why it depends on people. So I think what we can say for sure is that the repatriated North Koreans, they will face severe punishment, I think. Yeah.
The minimum being maybe they would be sent to prison camps?
I think so, yeah.
Prison camps, and in the worst case scenario, would they even might face a death penalty?
Actually, that is something happening in North Korea, right? As we know. So sometimes depends on the degree to the crime. Some people, they are executed in public. Yeah. So that kind of thing is still happening in North Korea.
And these are major violations of human rights. And I think now we're seeing more of that because since March, for the first time ever, Seoul's Unification Ministry decided to release a report, a public report that is, that lists all of the human rights abuses by the North, such as its public executions and torture. And this report is around 450 pages long. It was written based on around 1,600 cases of human rights violations testified by over 500 North Korean defectors between the years 2017 and 2022. And Jongchul, did you read this report yourself?
Sure. So actually, you can download it from the Ministry Unification homepage, and in English as well as in Korean. And I saw a lot of human rights violation cases, and I think a lot of people in the world, they already know what is happening in North Korea because, the international community has been paying attention to North Korea. Yeah. And one thing I was surprised was that, like we said, some people are tortured in North Korea, and some people, they are working as a forced labor in a prison camp. And even, some people, they get punished by watching some foreign movies. Yeah.
Just a movie?
Yeah, because, when I was in North Korea, I also watched foreign movies, but I should hide. Yeah. Yeah, because, if I get caught by watching the foreign movies, I will get fined, or I even faced some severe punishment. Yeah.
And now I can completely understand why you said your journey to South Korea, the revelation it was an escape for freedom. Because that's just, you're getting ripped of your basic freedom to even watch content, right?
That's right, yeah.
Now, here in the studio, now, what did you think about this report? Did you ever see what the Unification Ministry released?
Right, so I read articles of this and what they released, and I heard that this is written in all accounts of eyewitnesses, but I just can't imagine 450 pages. It's quite long, filled with just horror and 1,600 different ways that these human rights are just being violated. And it shocks me to think that a country, a nation is still standing on these values, and people are being taken away their dignity on a daily basis for choosing things that every human is allowed to choose to do. And I just believe that that's just quite tragic.
And I think a lot of attention is now on the fact that since the regime has opened up its borders to foreigners, and we've seen North Korean defectors forcibly repatriated back to this reclusive regime, a lot of people are saying that the human rights violations could have gotten worse. So could you tell us about the latest on that front?
Yeah, that's right. So it's not unclear. You can say like the repatriation happened because of the North Korean regime reopened its border. But I think it is right. First, it is true because after 3 years, COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea reopened its border and 600 North Koreans, they are repatriated. But the thing is that on the other hand, because of the reopened the border, a lot of North Koreans coming to South Korea, the number is actually increasing. Yeah. So I think opening the border again has some two effects. Yeah.
Two side effects, as in we may be seeing more people take refuge here to South Korea.
That's right.
Though it's a very dangerous and life-risking journey. But at the same time, we might see a lot of more forced repatriation, which goes against the UN's main and basic principle of human rights. And also at the same time, I think reopening borders might give more North Koreans access to South Korean content, which you mentioned before, Jongchul. If they do see it, it can cause a lot of penalties, right?
Of course, reopening the border again means people who are living near the border, like between China, Amrok River, Tuman River, they can actually restart smuggling again. Yeah. So which means people go to China, and when they bring something like food as well as Chinese movies or South Korean drama, which it means the information can go to North Korea again. Yeah.
And that could...
And then some people, if they get caught by doing that kind of business, I mean smuggling, of course people get punished.
Yeah, and that exacerbates the humanitarian crisis we're seeing. And we've mentioned a few times on News Gen on how much our generation seems to prioritize human rights. Then how attentive are we when it comes towards North Korea's humanitarian crisis? And now, have there been any efforts to try to tackle this issue?
Unfortunately, as we've mentioned on the show before, the younger generation of Koreans seem to be a little less emotionally attached to the idea of North Korea itself. According to a survey of 1,000 Koreans from ages 18 to 39, only 17% of them associated North Korea as the same ethnic Korean as us, which would naturally lead to them being a little less interested in the human rights issue. I do feel like the human rights interests are more angled towards LGBTQ rights and gender equality, sometimes immigrants, and a little more local issues. And yeah, I think we just feel a little bit separated from that.
We do. And that's the sad reality, I think. And now that we're seeing so many headlines on the North's provocations, and it's just an abundant amount of news that we see, so much that we become a little bit immune to it. But I think today's discussion could facilitate better discussions and perspectives as to really understanding that there's humans involved with it. And now I'd like to ask whether our global viewers could relate. Though North Korea may seem to be a distant country to them, I wanted to ask if they were quite keen on the fact that North Korea is going through a human rights violation crisis. So take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of our viewers had to say. Terrace Bell said, as Americans learn more about South Korea, North Korea often comes next. Most people know about the human rights crisis in North Korea, but only to a certain extent. Eric Lee said, my parents were born in Pyeongyang and saw with their own eyes as their once beautiful free society was being transformed into a dystopic nightmare. Any critical speech about the Kim regime was a guarantee that you would disappear overnight. Hannah Hirano said, Japan is at the forefront of international efforts to hold North Korea accountable for its human rights violations. But many young Japanese people are still in the dark about how bad things are. This lack of awareness is partly down to North Korea's closed-off society, that is, and the limited information available about its human rights abuses. Exactly, and I think these are all understandable given that North Korea is a reclusive regime. We don't really have much information. They're not pretty vocal on the international society about their human rights issues. But I do think because our generation, specifically those in their 20s and 30s, are quite keen about human rights, we need to be talking about it. So would you like to elaborate on why our generation needs to be concerned about the livelihoods of North Koreans?
Right. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but every country has an association with its neighboring country, how they interacted throughout history, and some have great relationships, excellent relationships, overcoming their differences, whether it be in culture, language, ethnic background, and maybe even political background. And I feel like we share so much more common ground culturally, linguistically, ethnically than any other neighboring countries in the world. We used to be one country, and we have the potential to be great partners. And in any case, even if we do share common grounds or not, human rights violations should never be tolerated under any circumstances. So yes, this is definitely something as, neighbors, we should really look into, study up on, and really care about.
Exactly. And Chongcher, you're speaking on behalf of our generation, but specifically among North Korean residents and those in their 20s and 30s. So why should our generation be concerned about their livelihoods?
Actually, I think all people should be concerned about human rights issues. And I think North Korean human rights issues are no exception, So around me in South Korea, which is grateful is that a lot of people, they are actually paying attention to North Korean human rights. And as we know, people in North Korea, they are still suffering from hunger and human rights violations. So it's been almost for 7 decades, and which is not a short period, right? So I think this is kind of a tragedy. So this reality in North Korea still bothers us. I mean, bothers the world. I think it is natural for us to pay attention to North Korean human rights.
Exactly. And our discussion does come at a time when geopolitics are very flared. We're seeing a lot of tensions, especially here in the Korean Peninsula. Just in the morning today, we heard about the IRBM test that North Korea is pulling off. We're also seeing defense ministers from South Korea and the U.S. also talk about how big of a security threat North Korea is posing. But I think the message today is that we need to sometimes divide politics, diplomacy, from the human rights, because humans, like the residents there, they have nothing to do with what the regime is politically deciding to orchestrate. And also, our discussion comes at a day when a North Korean Human Rights Museum will be open, right now?
Right. So the NKDB, North Korea Database Center, was founded back in 2003, and it was to record, analyze, and store data on the North Korean human rights status. This organization is now celebrating its 20 years anniversary and has opened a museum. You can go, experience, and learn about North Korea, the human rights issues there. I would absolutely love to visit, but I do feel like it will be a little bit emotional and devastating to kind of face the truth that perhaps we have been avoiding for a long time because of our daily conveniences.
And I completely agree. I think museums like this should be more open, and reports like the Unification Ministry has released back in March should be revealed to the public, because we need to raise awareness on what's actually happening. And that's why, before we end off, I'd like to ask, is there any message or last words you guys would like to deliver to our viewers to remember today?
Yes. I mean, honestly, it's such a great honor to have Jeongchul on the show today, because oftentimes I feel like when we read the news, when we study things with text, we just kind of see it in a factual way, in a historical way. But when people like Jeongchul come on the show, when you have the privilege to interact with people like that, it becomes very real, very emotional, and you understand that, you know, Jeongchul and I are the same. We are the same. And he just has this experience from North Korea, which nobody should be having, really. And I think really just connecting on an emotional level, not just, you know, watching it through something, but experiencing it, whether it through museums or talking with people. I think that's so important.
Exactly. Reading through these news headlines and realizing that there's a human behind it.
Absolutely.
And that human being, you, Jeongchul. So any last words you'd like to give?
That's right. So it's an honor for me as well. Recording North Korean human rights cases is really important because it can give a signal to the perpetrators in North Korea who are assaulting normal North Koreans, which can say like, if you guys keep torturing or keep harassing people, maybe you guys will face severe punishment in the future. That's why I think the report is kind of important. But the more important thing is that I think we should think about as well what can we do to change the life of North Koreans?
Instead of just talking about it, though, we hope to see some actions.
Absolutely.
Exactly, and hopefully we will see that as President Yoon is in the APEC summit, and we are seeing the international community prioritizing this issue. And hopefully here on News Generation, as much as we harmonize between North and South, we will facilitate better discussions on how to really bring on that action. Until then, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nelsong.
My pleasure.
And Lee Jeongchul.
Great to be here again.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.